Bill Gates thinks wealthy nations should stop eating beef and switch to plant-based alternatives. What do you think? Now let's read some comments. I think he has a point, though I don't think it should be as absolute as he states. He wants wealthy countries on 100% synthetic meat, which is ridiculous and impossible. But phasing in synthetic will absolutely help in a lot of ways, even if we only get to 50%. It's only logistically impossible right now. If demand switches from real meat to vegetarian alternatives gradually, the market could adapt just fine. The amount of acreage and resources needed for meat alternatives is a fraction compared to beef. The ability for society to accommodate vegetarianism is a relatively simple problem to accomplish. In the meantime, the problem of cow burps is much more complicated. We could cut down almost all methane emissions from cattle if we supplemented their diets with a special species of red seaweed. It's not expensive or complicated to acquire. The big problem is, if society can grow enough red seaweed for all cattle globally, and we don't right now. It's not impossible. It's quite easy actually, but it will take a lot of time. So technically yes, now it's impossible. Get me that 1 alternative that's also 1 with current pricing, and it'd do it in a heartbeat. Personally, I really like Beyond Meat. Pricey, but then again, comparable to ethically okay meat. If you give up on the idea that you're going to find a perfect meat substitute and stop trying to eat meat, you'll find a whole world of meals you can make open up. I really don't like how much everyone is pushing for a meat substitute when you can get the same nutrition for a fraction of the cost with plants or even lower impact meat like fish. Personally, I think we should just stop subsidizing the meat industry and heavily tax large animal meat and let the free market take over with new food innovation. No need to convince people to switch over when they will do it naturally themselves. If a burger costs 3x as much as it used to. The context where I first heard Gates express this was specifically discussing Beyond and Impossible. Basically, he was saying how he thought it was an incredible jump towards the end goal. A kind of expensive alternative that is very similar to beef in many ways will be adopted by wealthier people. This is ultimately a good step in developing the ideal replacement, as it introduces scale to both drop the price and research improved alternatives. If you can get that, the overwhelming majority of people really don't care, and economics clearly dictates that the cheaper to produce meat will win out every time. You should try Future Burgers burgers. Tried one for a mystery shopping thing as a veggie of 6 years, and I swear to god it was exactly like beef. Really didn't like it cause I've never been a huge fan of beef, but my boyfriend, a meat eater, came home just after I'd cooked them and was so confused about why I was cooking and eating beef burgers because the smell was so similar. Moderation in all things. I think people should probably eat less meat. I don't think it's all or nothing. If we treated beef the way we treat luxury foods, we would still enjoy it, but in smaller portions and less frequently. A world divided into vegans and carnivores doesn't help us as much as having environmentally taxing foods not be staples in the normal North American diet. I think Gates was actually referring to synthetic meats. So no one has to cut down on meat consumption, it's just a change of source. I was just about to post separately, but I'm piggybacking BC with a similar vibe here. I think, as told to me by a food scientist, that most people eat too much meat anyway, although most people realistically need to eat a little, like 1x-2x a week. I think this would help cut greenhouse gas emissions and land misuse, and while I personally am not against eating all meat, it would make it less common to see inhumane and unsafe cattle farming. It'd be lovely, in my mind, to see those who continue to eat meat see it as the special treat that it is, and instead of buying pounds and pounds of ground beef each week just splurge on one well-sourced steak or salmon or something a chef cooked. Most of all, I think it's good that he acknowledge that this might not be realistic for less developed or even rapidly developing countries, even if they rely less on meat in their diets. I think it must be done, but I really think that he's saying not to stop people from buying normal meat, but for wealthy nations to finance investigations of this food alternatives, to make them more cheaper so everybody could buy it. Fake meat alternatives are not the answer, and they are environmentally costly too. Easier would be convincing people to try recipes that naturally don't contain meat, like a huge amount of Indian food, which is amazing. Anything that tries to be something else is going to fail. pizza and french fries are vegetarian. It will be like everything else those of extreme privilege suggest it will be a rules for thee, but not for me thing. From telling everyone to drive hybrids while on a private jet, telling people to stay in lockdown while having big get-togethers, to telling us to stop eating meat and having 3 meals a day using real meat products like Kobe beef. Like I get the sentiment, I'm not a bleeding heart by any means, and seeing how meat is made gives me a bit of heebie-jeebies. I'm fairly conservative, hunt butcher own food several times, worked on farms. If there was something equitable I would do it. But there isn't, it's pricey and still tastes like shit stewed in hot garbage. Even the absolute best I have tried, I would really just rather have vegetables. Alternatives are just not there in terms of price/taste. The closest I have seen is meat reduced products aka fillers. Even then, the further it gets from 100% meat the worse it tastes. In general, it's a mostly true sentiment. The thing Bill Gates said yesterday or day before is dead wrong and stupid. It's motivated by his ownership stakes in the bullshit companies making plant-based meat products. Lab-grown meat is an excellent idea, avoids nearly all the downsides I will discuss, and reaps nearly all the upsides of animal-grown meat. Impossible Burger is bullshit. It's not nutritious. The macro and micronutrients are nowhere near as healthy as meat. If you ate it for the bulk of your diet, you'd be fat/inflamed/sad/bad at recovery and growth. If you ate real meat for the bulk of your diet, you'd be lean/not inflamed/happy/good at recovery and growth. Plus, you'd be almost certainly not inflamed in ways that cause chronic diseases and general low quality of life. The carnivore diet is an excellent elimination style diet that contains very nearly complete nutrition. The impossible diet would make you fat and dead much sooner because it is so much more sugar, so much less healthy fat and protein, and so much less complete. Meat doesn't have much of a GHG emission problem. Beef seems to, but only feedlot style beef. If you're turning otherwise useless land into cattle grazing productive land, it's probably nowhere near as bad. From a GHG perspective, people should eat chicken, fish, eggs, pork, and whatever forms of meat are low marginal contributors to GHG emission. This conveniently is pretty much identical to what meat is cheap. People should not eat grain. It's not good long term. Big brains, big muscles, lean, not fat, bodies, and tall, healthy skeletons are generally grown from meat and dairy, not grain. Many people should not eat dairy. Most people should eat less meat. I think wealthy nations should fund the research and improvements to infrastructure to make meatless meat alternatives taste and cost the same. I think we as a species need to move away from the meat consumerism and slaughterhouses, but meat is just too damn tasty. I'm actually excited about Impossible Burgers. They are delicious, and I actually find myself ordering them over beef from back because why not? It'll take a lot more work and $sign to really be able to grow meat products that everyone would eat, and that's something wealthy countries should be pushing for. If he's literally just saying they should stop eating beef and eat rice and beans instead, then seems kind of dumb lol. Like yeah, would be better for the planet, but not realistic. For ground meats I think it'll be a viable alternative, but I don't think we are anywhere near it being able to replace cuts with specific grain and fat structures of brisket, steak, tenderloin, or roast. He's talking about synthetic meat. But plant-based alternatives would be cheaper than standard meat if it weren't for all the subsidies the agricultural industry lobbies for. The problem I have with statements like this is that among our governments and the people who want to be in government, there are a bevy of people who want to foist a meatless society on the rest of us because they get their jollies out of foisting things on the rest of us. And if their plan wrecks your life, their only response is some form of F*********. Statements like what Gates is quoted here as saying are red meat to this sort of person. And you can bet your last scrap of money that the powerful and well connected will have a way to avoid these imposed lifestyle changes. Stalin and Mao and Kim Jong-il lived like princes while their people literally starved. I don't trust ethical questions to billionaires whose entire success hinged on years of unethical business practices. I'm glad that Bill Gates has become philanthropic. I think he does a lot of good. I think he also has done harm through a fairly rigid, ruthless capitalist mindset. Sometimes, ethical questions shouldn't be asked by the guy who knows how to be a modern day tycoon. It needs to be coming from the bottom up and need more collaborative models. So I appreciate his money. I appreciate that he's bringing attention to these issues and getting a conversation going, but I would never make a decision based on only Bill Gates' recommendation. I would want people with experience in the communities affected. If you look at the history of sumptuary laws, prohibition and the war on drugs, you'll see that trying to legislate to stop humans doing something pleasurable doesn't exactly have the best track record. I'd wager that plowing money into many of the promising scientific advances that show you can reduce the methane output of livestock by over 75% by giving them cheap dietary supplements is going to be a much more productive use of funds than trying to fundamentally change human food culture overnight. Banning things because they can be abused or used to excess is generally unpopular and ineffective. Better to regulate the beef industry, which might raise the prices slightly and reduce consumption to more manageable levels. There was always cows after all, just fewer perhaps, and they ate different diets. I feel like the lesson of prohibition is sometimes forgotten. The way smoking was addressed is more effective. Tax and regulate and protect the consumer from misrepresentation of the product, but retain their individual choice to buy or not. Personally, I would never want to give up beef, but I could stand to eat a little less. Better alternative is to move away from factory farming and more towards traditional cattle farming. Grass-fed is better for the environment, better for the cattle, better for human consumption. That's the only type of beef our family consumes. Because it costs more, we eat less of it, leading to a balanced diet while consuming less beef than the average family. We've done the same for chicken. Pork is harder to find. Regardless, I don't appreciate being forced to do anything, whether that's through economic or social pressures. Personally, I think we should maybe shift to a more plant-based diet, not eliminate meat entirely, as it does provide some easy access to some nutrition. I mainly see this as a health, environmental and ethics standpoint. However, I also would hope before this happens some cheap and easy alternatives to meat sources should pop up. Not to say some fruits and veggies are expensive, but having cheap and easy sources of protein, iron and vitamin B12, which isn't as prevalent in vegetarian and vegan sources, are provided. This is because sometimes poorer families and even in wealthy countries might not be able to afford a totally vegetarian or vegan diet for the whole family. Also, even development of lab-grown meat to reduce ethics and environmental debates over farming and slaughter of animals. If we can grow affordable meat in a lab, it might reduce need for land, reduce pollution and reduce animal cruelty and abuse, as well as other things. I believe we are a good while away from it though. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Also like the video if you enjoy it.